My husband brought home a young girl. He said she was the orphaned daughter of an old friend and asked me to raise her, but shortly after she entered the household, I suddenly fell ill and passed away. After death, I became a lonely spirit, watching as the girl's biological mother took my place in the household. Only then did I realize, all of this was actually a scheme devised by my husband and his first love. My own death does not matter, but they should never have mistreated and harmed the daughter I left behind in this world. My daughter was thrown into a pig cage, yet I was powerless to save her. Just as my heart was being torn apart by grief, a golden light suddenly appeared before me and pulled me in. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the time just before my husband brought that young girl home. A flash of light streaked across the gloomy sky, and a clap of thunder shattered the silence of the night. I abruptly sat up in bed. After realizing that my body could physically feel everything around me, I immediately pushed aside the bed curtains, got out of bed, and hurried eagerly to my daughter Zhao Zhao's room. Only when I saw the sweet, tender face sleeping peacefully in bed did I let out a sigh of relief, collapsing weakly to the floor. At the same time, tears quickly soaked my cheeks, after witnessing the tragic end of my daughter being subjected to the pig cage punishment. I, who had been drifting as a wandering soul, was reborn. In my previous life, my husband Jet Shen brought home a girl named Dina Jiyu, claiming she was the orphan child of an old friend, and asked me to adopt her. After Dina Jiyu entered the household, she behaved obediently and sensible, showing respect to me everywhere and being very friendly to Zhao Zhao as well. Her flawless performance gradually dispelled my suspicions and wariness, and I began to treat her as my own daughter. It wasn't until half a year after she entered the household that I suddenly fainted while managing domestic affairs. After the physician examined me, he said I had long been afflicted with a strange poison that had penetrated my internal organs, beyond the reach of any remedy. From the moment I collapsed to my last breath, it took only 3 days. I didn't even have time to uncover the cause of the poisoning before I died right there on the bed. Somehow, my soul did not dissipate after death, but instead stayed by my daughter Shen Zhao's side. I thought it was heaven's pity that gave me the chance to watch my daughter grow up, but I never expected it to be the beginning of a nightmarish torment. By Zhao Zhao's side, I watched helplessly as she was ignored by Jet Shen, manipulated by Dina Jiyu, and bullied by the servants in the mansion. The little girl I had so doted on, without her mother's protection, actually went hungry and cold after Jet Shen married his first love, Jiyu Ingshuang, and brought her into the mansion. Zhao Zhao's life became more difficult than ever before. The mother and daughter held their heads high in front of Zhao Zhao, while my Zhao Zhao was as humble as dust. A ghost cannot shed tears, and though I wished to kill my enemies with my own hands, I could only turn into a cold wind that passed through their bodies, unable to harm them in the slightest. Later, by a twist of fate, Zhao Zhao became acquainted with the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince treated her extremely well and intended to welcome her into the Eastern Palace. I thought she had finally found happiness after enduring so much hardship, but who would have thought that Jet Shen and the Jiyu mother and daughter duo would come up with such a sinister plan to swap the brides. 2 bridal sedan chairs, one carrying Dina Jiyu toward the magnificent palace, the other carrying Zhao Zhao, knocking on the door to a cruel hell. The Jiyu mother and daughter disliked Zhao Zhao, so they naturally went to great lengths to arrange a substitute groom for her. That well-dressed Chen family scoundrel had despicable character, always beating Zhao Zhao until she was covered in bruises. Finally, there came a time when Zhao Zhao was beaten so severely that she was barely breathing, her life hanging by a thread. Fearing the consequences of her status as an official's daughter and worried that the reputation of killing his wife would ruin his career, that Chen scoundrel actually falsely accused Zhao Zhao of adultery with another man and had her drowned in a pig cage. Poor my Zhao Zhao, who should have had a brilliant life, ended up sinking into the pond amid filthy and vile curses. Mother. The little one lying on the bed had woken up at some point. After noticing I was in the room, Zhao Zhao called out groggily, "Mother is here." Hearing the sound, I quickly wiped away my tears and hurried toward the bed. Perhaps it's the bond between mother and daughter, but despite my best efforts to hide it, Zhao Zhao still noticed that something was off with my emotions. "Mom, what's wrong?" The little girl snuggled into my arms, her soft voice tinged with a hint of worry. I held her tightly, patting her back to comfort her. Mother is fine. Mother just wanted to see Jiao Jiao. Then mother will sleep with Jiao Jiao tonight. The little one looked up at me, her eyes filled with anticipation. I chuckled, nodded, and lay down holding her. With my gentle coaxing, the little one in my arms began to feel sleepy again. Mother. Suddenly, I heard Jiao Jiao murmur softly, as if in a dream, "Father will be back soon, right?" My hand paused for a moment, and then I replied with a soft yes. Jetshin's term of office is coming to an end, and he will soon return to the capital. I miss Daddy. The little girl's voice was already somewhat indistinct. I miss him too. I wish he were dead. Jiao Jiao, who had drifted into dreamland, could not see the shadow in my eyes. Mother, where are we going? Early in the morning, I woke Jiao Jiao up from bed. After washing up, she watched me instruct the maids to pack our belongings. Tilting her head in confusion, I straightened the ribbons on her dress and ruffled her hair. "Haven't you always wanted to go play with cousin Xianxian? Mother will send you to stay with your aunt in Jiangju for a while." "Really?" Zhao Zhao's face lit up for a moment. But soon she became conflicted again. "But if father comes back and can't see Jiao Jiao, will he be sad?" Looking at Jiao Jiao's innocent and pure appearance, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness in my heart. She doesn't know that the father she longs for is actually indulging in pleasure with the very people who hurt her while she suffers from bullying. Jetshin is utterly unworthy of Jiao Jiao calling him daddy, but fortunately, Jiao Jiao is still young. If anything were to happen to Jetshin, she would probably accept the reality quite quickly. "Your cousin Xianxian said she has prepared some fun and unusual things for you to play with together." I didn't mention Jetshin at all, only piqued her interest in going to Jiangju. Jiao Jiao hesitated for a while. But in the end, her childlike nature won out. 5. After watching the carriage carrying Jiao Jiao disappear into the distance, I had another carriage arranged for myself. I need to go out to take care of something. After returning to my room to change into outdoor clothes, I encountered someone walking toward me as I passed through the corridor. "Madam," Bijou curtsied to me, her demeanor respectful. "The fabric you ordered from the clothier last time has been delivered." My gaze fell upon the indigo fabric she held in her arms. It was the finest cloud pattern brocade. In my previous life, to welcome Jetshin's return, I specially had someone find cloud-patterned brocade to make new clothes for him. Now that I clearly see his true nature of being fickle and heartless, I naturally don't want to waste any more thoughts on him. "Take it to the storeroom and put it away." I waved my hand to let Bijou leave. I was about to move forward when I suddenly noticed the slight frown on Emerald Pearl's brow, so I called her back. "Wait, take the fabric to the embroiderer and have a new set of clothes made for my husband." After I spoke, the delicate furrow in Emerald Pearl's brow gently smoothed away. I stared at her lovely profile for a long moment before speaking softly. Bijou, who was about to leave, stopped in her tracks and asked, "Does Madam have any further instructions?" "Nothing. I just thought you've been working hard lately and remembered there's a piece of moonlight gauze in the storeroom. I'll give it to you as a reward." "Thank you, Madam." Bijou's joy was evident, her voice rising with excitement. I nodded, watching her leave with a distant gaze. "Oh, Bichu. There will be plenty more for you to thank me for later. I brought you from my maiden home, treating you as a confidant, yet I never imagined your thoughts could run so deep. In my past life, you climbed into Jetshin's bed after my death, but I don't care. But you should never, ever have used Jiao Jiao as a pawn." After Madame Jiu entered the household, to show her loyalty, she mistreated Jiao Jiao as a token of allegiance to please Madame Jiu. "She grew up right before your eyes. How could you bear to do it?" I closed my eyes, suppressing the surging hatred. "Never mind, since you're so fond of Jetshin, I'll grant your wish." 6. Madam, we've arrived at Bajiao Lane. The carriage passed through the bustling street and stopped at the entrance of a small alley. Seeing the dark and deep appearance of the alley, Hong Yu, who was supporting me, couldn't help but tighten her grip. "Madam, what are we going to do?" "We're going to find someone." From deep in the alley, inside a dilapidated tiled house, came the sound of unbearable cursing. "You consumptive jinx, after bringing death to my son, now you want to kill this old woman too." After a series of clattering noises, the woman's pleading cries could be heard. "Mother, please stop hitting me. I will work hard and earn money." Please don't sell me off, Pa. With your sickly appearance, how much could you possibly earn? It's your good fortune that Master Chen has taken a liking to you. Don't pretend to be some chaste and virtuous woman here." The stream of curses was abruptly cut off by another voice. "If it's such a blessing, why don't you go enjoy it yourself?" I immediately had Hong Yu push the door open and cast a cold glare at the woman holding a broom in the courtyard. If Master Chen had taken a liking to me, I would definitely. The woman was momentarily caught off guard, but as soon as she noticed the strangers entering, she immediately brandished the broom again. "Who are these meddlesome people?" I had Hong Yu help the woman who had fallen to the ground to her feet, then turned my gaze to the matron. "How much did Master Chen pay you to buy her?" The matron understood that I had come for that woman. Seeing that I was dressed in fine clothes, her eyes rolled thoughtfully as she adopted a pleasant tone. "Has Madam also taken a fancy to my daughter-in-law? If Madam wants her, then just give 50 taels of silver." The woman's eyes sparkled with a calculating gleam, and I watched, curling my lips coldly. "I'll give you 100 taels, but on one condition: you must sign the pledge, and once you receive the silver, she will no longer be your family's daughter-in-law. Whatever happens afterward will have nothing to do with your family." Upon hearing this, the woman felt as if she had caught a pie falling from the sky and eagerly pressed her fingerprint onto the pledge that Hong Yu had brought out. 7. In the carriage on the way back to the mansion, the anxious woman finally couldn't hold back and spoke up. "Madam, why did you buy me that 100 taels?" I know what she wants to say. Old Master Chen only offered her former mother-in-law 20 taels, and 50 taels was already her former mother-in-law's exorbitant demand, and I gave 100 taels all at once. Truly acting like a sucker. Seeing her terrified expression, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Don't worry. I have no ill intentions in taking you away. As for the 100 taels, that wicked woman may not be able to hold onto them securely." I gazed at her with intense eyes. "My dear, your good days are yet to come." 8. 3 days later, a woman with a bruised and swollen face went to the government office to report that her 100 taels of silver had been stolen. Upon investigation, it was found that the perpetrators were from a gambling den. The woman was addicted to gambling and had a mountain of debt. "It is only natural to repay debts." The woman's wailing was useless, and she had no choice but to leave in disgrace, covered in injuries. When Hong Yu reported the news to me, I didn't pay much attention. The tip received by the gambling den was actually leaked by me in the first place. The woman's fate was within expectations. More important than her was Jet Shin, who returned to the residence today. 9. Just as I entered the front courtyard hall, I saw a tall and straight man standing with his hands behind his back. He truly possessed an elegant and handsome demeanor. To be honest, one of the reasons I agreed to the marriage with the Shin family back then was because Jet Shin had such good looks. After marriage, our life together was harmonious and blissful. I thought I had married the right person, but I never expected that beneath his gentlemanly appearance lay a thoroughly rotten heart. In my previous life, I only learned after my death that Jet Shin had resigned himself to the family's marriage arrangements after hearing the news that his childhood sweetheart had married someone else, and while he was serving in a provincial post, he encountered her, who had just been widowed. The obsession of loving someone you can't have instantly became uncontrollable. Jet Shin heard the sound and turned to come towards me. He wanted to hold my hand, but I avoided it. "Dirty," I said. He froze for a moment, thinking that I was put off by his just having finished a dusty journey. He didn't probe too deeply into my attitude. "I have something to tell you," Jet Shin said. I raised an eyebrow. "What a coincidence. I also have something to say. However, please go first." My husband, I naturally knew what he was going to say. In my previous life, I was so overwhelmed with longing for him and so focused on seeing him after such a long time that I overlooked the little girl standing right behind him. This time, my gaze had already landed on Dina Gu before his did. 10. "This is Dina, the orphaned daughter of an old friend of mine," Jet Shin said. Having Dina Gu step forward, he continued, "I wanted to bring her into the household to raise her, seeing as she has lost both parents and is all alone in the world." "Greetings, madam," Dina Gu spoke. Carrying herself with considerable poise and grace, I did not hide my scrutiny of her, my gaze cutting into her inch by inch. "Daddy," at this time, Dina Gu was still young after all. And no matter how hard she tried to feign composure, she still showed her fear. She couldn't help but clutch Jetshin's robe tightly. "Daddy," I caught the end of her words, raised my tone, and glared at Jetshin. "Don't misunderstand, Ray," Jetshin quickly explained. "I was thinking of adopting Dina as my daughter. So I let her call me Daddy first. Then," he continued in a gentle tone, "think about it, Dina coming to the mansion can also be a companion for our Jiao Jiao, and Jiao Jiao. She'll definitely like Dina." Jetshin looked around, searching for Zhao Zhao's figure. I sneered. The first thing upon returning home was not to look for his daughter, but to eagerly bring up the matter of adopting Dina Jiyu. Bringing up Jiao Jiao was also to smooth the way for Dina Gu's entry into the household in the previous life. It was precisely because Jiao Jiao was present and showed curiosity and enthusiasm towards Dina Jiyu that I relented. This time, I sent Jiao Jiao away precisely to prevent him from using our daughter. "Jetshin, you truly don't deserve to be called a father." I sent Jiao Jiao to stay with her cousin in Jiangju for a few days, I said calmly. Jetshin frowned upon hearing this. "Why didn't she stay in the residence waiting for my return? This is really..." "Forget it, Ray, look at the matter with Dina." I glanced at him, nodded, and smiled slightly. "Since she is the child of your old friend, it's only natural for us to lend a hand." I sent Jiao Jiao away to keep her out of trouble, not to prevent Dina Jiyu from entering the mansion. "Wonderful, I knew you, Ray, are the most understanding." Jetshin breathed a sigh of relief, and even Dina Gu's tense expression softened. However, I changed the tone. "I am managing the household affairs while also taking care of Jiao Jiao. I simply don't have the capacity to handle Dina's matters. After she enters the residence, all matters concerning her will be handed over to Auntie Zhu to take charge of." Jetshin looked puzzled. "Auntie Zhu? What Auntie Zhu? Oh, this is what I wanted to discuss with you. My husband." I slightly curved my lips into a smile. "To welcome you back to the residence, I have promoted Bijou, who serves by my side, to the status of a concubine. I hope you will show her much affection, so that concubine Zhu may soon bear children for the Shen family." 11. The matter of adopting Dina Jiyu has been settled. However, regarding the matter of taking a concubine, Jetshin blamed me for acting on my own and still hasn't given up on pushing Dina Jiyu toward me. I directly threw up my hands and said, "If you want to place her under my care, that's fine. But from now on, I will no longer handle any affairs in this household." Jetshin was immediately left speechless. Seeing my indifferent expression, he could only leave in a huff, flicking his sleeve in anger. The wretch still has some self-awareness, knowing that without me managing the household, the estate would surely fall into disarray. After all, the dowry I brought with me had once resolved the Shen family's urgent crisis, and after that, all the expenses of the Shen family, his Jetshin spending in Yazhou. Which one didn't come out of my pocket? Thinking back to my previous life, that scum and the Jiyu mother and daughter lived a carefree and prosperous life relying on the dowry I left behind. I turned my gaze back to Dina Jiyu and after a long while, finally spoke. "Someone, take her to Aunt Zhu's Qiuxiang courtyard." The servant stepped forward as ordered, ready to escort Dina Jiyu away. A flicker of unwillingness crossed Dina Gu's face, but she quickly composed herself and bowed respectfully to me. "Then I shall take my leave. Mother, please rest early." "Wait," I called out to stop her. "Does Mother have any further instructions?" Dina Gu's voice was gentle, her eyes shimmering with anticipation. She thought it was her well-behaved and sensible demeanor that made me change my mind, so she tried her best to act even more obedient. I looked down at her with a slight smile. "Although the Shen family has adopted you, in the end, it is Aunt Zhu who will be taking care of you from now on. Besides, you are not truly of Shen family blood, so you are not worthy of calling me mother. From now on, when we meet, it would be better to address her as madam." With that, I left without even glancing at her pale face. 12. Hongyu, if you have something to say, just say it. On the way back to the main courtyard, I noticed Hongyu's hesitation. It was probably my attitude toward Dina Jiyu that she found strange. Under my direct questioning, she finally voiced her speculation. "Madam, this little girl that the master brought back, could she be..." I knew what she was going to say. Hongyu wanted to say that Dina Jiyu might be Jetshin's illegitimate child from outside. Unfortunately, she is not. Dina Jiyu is indeed the child of Jiyu Ingshuang and her deceased husband. It's just that before reuniting with Jetshin, Jiyu Ingxuang changed her daughter's name, Dina Dina, Xian Xian. Jetshen's courtesy name is Xian. It was made clear to Jetshen that Jiyu Ingxuang had been missing him, Shen Xian, all along, and Dina Jiyu had long since started calling Jetshen father. How ironic it all seems. Countless times, Jetshen has neglected his own flesh and blood for the sake of a child who is not related to him by blood. Half of the suffering Zhao Zhao endured in her previous life stemmed from her father's inaction. If he had shown even the slightest bit of care for Zhao Zhao, the Jiyu mother and daughter would not have dared to harm her so brazenly. Hongyu, if someone were to harm Zhao Zhao, what do you think should be their fate? I asked Hongyu. What? Harm the young lady? Hongyu widened her eyes, then said indignantly, Miss Zhao Zhao is so sensible and lovable. If anyone dares to harm her, they deserve to be hacked to pieces. Yes, they deserve to be hacked to pieces. I crushed the flower I had casually picked in my palm and instructed Hongyu, deliver the finished clothes sent by the seamstress to Bijou and have her personally deliver them to Jetshen. 13. After all, Bijou truly has some skills. Wearing the moon shadow gauze I rewarded her, she once again successfully climbed into Jetshen's bed. Although it was largely due to the substances I sprinkled on the fabric, it ultimately fulfilled their connection across 2 lifetimes. Jetshen had previously blamed me for acting on my own, but now he has tasted the sweetness and stays overnight in the autumn fragrance courtyard every night. I sat as steady as a mountain in the main courtyard. But someone in the autumn fragrance courtyard couldn't stay still. Jetshen often visited the autumn fragrance courtyard, and Dina Jiyu initially thought it was a good thing. Her presence could remind Jetshen that he still had his first love, her mother, waiting outside for him to make plans. But as Jetshen grew increasingly perfunctory in his subtle hints to her, every time he came to the autumn fragrance courtyard, he couldn't wait to close the door with Bijou and get down to business. Dina Jiyu began to feel a sense of crisis for her mother. When I received the report from the person keeping watch that Dina Jiyu had secretly slipped out of the mansion, I smiled. I told the servants to let her go and just keep a close eye on her. After Dina Jiyu returned, she spoke with Jetshen about something. Though I don't know what was said, Jetshen was holding Bijou in his arms one moment, enjoying her warmth and fragrance, and the next. He abruptly left her behind and hurriedly departed from the mansion. He did not return to the mansion for several days after that. It was unclear what tricks the woman outside had used, but after Jetshen returned to the mansion, he became much colder toward Bijou. Bijou was no pushover either. She naturally understood that the change in Jetshen's attitude was closely related to Dina Jiyu. In her previous life, she only got involved with Jetshen after Jiyu Ingxuang entered the scene. Living under the control of the Jiyu mother and daughter, she naturally had to act subserviently and flatteringly at every turn. In this life, I sent Dina Jiyu to her side and adopted a hands-off attitude. Since Dina Jiyu ruined her plans, she was bound to retaliate. When thieves fall out, honest men come by their own. Bijou began to secretly torment Dina Jiyu, using methods that left Dina Jiyu too ashamed to speak of. Every time Dina Jiyu went to Jetshen to complain, Bijou would put on a pitiful expression and demand that she provide evidence. Dina Jiyu found it hard to speak out. After several such incidents, Jetshen grew increasingly impatient with her and instead ended up back in bed with Bijou, unwilling to accept this. Dina Jiyu left the mansion again to seek advice from her mother. It must be tough for Jetshen, constantly juggling between 2 women. He looks noticeably more haggard. 14. Madam, this is the chicken soup I prepared for you. Dina Jiyu brought a bowl of chicken soup to the main courtyard, her attitude so respectful that not a single flaw could be found. I looked her over from head to toe. In just a month, she had already lost a significant amount of weight compared to when she first entered the mansion. Pearl's methods were indeed quite ruthless. However, Dina Jiyu was quite resilient. Despite being tormented by Pearl, she never forgot the mission that brought her into the Shen mansion. I looked at the steaming soup bowl in front of me and gave her a meaningful glance. I heard you personally supervised the kitchen for 2 hours. That's truly thoughtful of you, madam. I am deeply grateful that you allowed Dina into the residence. This is just a small token of my appreciation, seeing that I hadn't moved. She added, Madam, this soup is best enjoyed while it's hot. I raised an eyebrow. Under her expectant gaze, she leisurely picked up the spoon and scooped a mouthful of clear, bright chicken soup. Just as it was about to reach her lips, she suddenly placed the spoon back into the soup bowl. The porcelain clinked with a crisp sound, and I didn't miss the disappointment in Dina Gu's eyes. "It's too hot. I'll drink it later." With that, I spoke again, bringing up another topic. "Dina, since you're here, there's something I need to discuss with you. Please go ahead, madam. In a few days, the Grand Princess's residence is hosting a banquet. Originally, Zhao Zhao was supposed to accompany me, but since she's not here, you shall come with me instead." Upon hearing this, Dina Gu was somewhat incredulous. After all, during her time in the residence, my attitude toward her had been rather indifferent. Jetchen served as an official in the court, and social banquets in the capital's inner circles were also frequent occurrences. In my previous life, because of Zhao Zhao, whenever I went out to attend banquets, I would always bring Dina Gu along. Among the young nobles of her generation, she managed to thrive and gain quite a reputation. I have been ignoring Dina Gu all this time, and now that it's brought up, she suddenly feels flattered. Moreover, it's the residence of the Grand Princess, a place where the powerful gather and noble families converge. Dina Gu couldn't help but feel her heart surge with excitement, her face flushed red with excitement. "Thank you, madam, I waved my hand, signaling for her to withdraw. "Then go and prepare for now." 15. Not long after Dina Gu left, Jetchen came over. At that moment, I had just dried the ink on the letter paper and was placing it into an envelope. "It's much quieter here at your place." As soon as he entered, Jetchen swept his robe aside and sat down with a grand gesture, the gloom in his eyes impossible to conceal. I pushed aside the beaded curtain and stepped out, feigning a concerned expression. "What's troubling you, my husband? Has concubine Ju not been serving you well?" "She is a good one," Jetchen sighed. Baiju was a minor issue. What troubled him was the one outside. The people I sent to keep watch brought back news that Jiu Yingshuang was causing even more of a stir. He even threatened several times to bring the matter to my attention. And it took Jetchen a lot of persuasion to calm him down. Jetchen naturally didn't dare complain to me about the dirty deeds he had done himself. So he could only keep his grievances to himself. "Ray, it's been a while since I last stayed in your courtyard." Jetchen looked at me with some resentment, but all I felt was disgust. I forced a fake smile and moved the soup bowl on the table in front of him. "Husband, you've been working hard lately. Have some chicken soup to nourish yourself." Jetchen showed a touched expression, as if to say, "You're still the one who cares about me the most," and drank several mouthfuls of the soup in a row. "This soup actually tastes quite good," he praised. I smiled and looked at him. "Right, Dina's cooking skills are pretty good." Phut. That mouthful of soup Jetchen hadn't swallowed yet was directly sprayed out. "What did you say? Dina made this?" Jetchen widened his eyes, seeking confirmation from me. "Yes, this was delivered by Dina, and it was simmered for a full 2 hours." I pretended not to understand. "Husband, is there something wrong with this soup?" "No, nothing. I just suddenly remembered that I have some urgent matters to attend to." Jetchen hurried away, and I sneered as I watched his retreating figure. "Jetchen, oh Jetchen, it turns out you really did know about Dina Gu putting slow-acting poison in my food. Your heart is utterly rotten." I called the servants to clean up the mess and handed the letter I had just written to Hong Yu, instructing her, "Have someone deliver it to Jiangju." 16. When the princess's residence held the banquet, I attended with Dina Gu. The ladies from various families were all curious about the unfamiliar young girl who had appeared by my side. Dina Gu had inherited her mother's beauty. Though she was still young, one could already tell she would grow up to be quite lovely. The murmurs of discussion that occasionally reached her ears greatly satisfied Dina Gu's vanity. Her previously somewhat timid and hunched back in such occasions now straightened up. Someone couldn't help but ask, "Madam Shen, who is this beside you?" Hong Yu answered for me, in reply to Madam Assistant Minister. "This is Miss Dina, whom my master has adopted as a foster daughter, raised by the concubine in the household." Upon hearing this, the enthusiasm on the faces of the several ladies faded. Madam Assistant Minister whispered to another noblewoman beside her, "I thought she was a niece or something of Lady Shen's, but it turns out she's just an adopted daughter, and raised by a concubine at that, so she's just a non-blood-related illegitimate daughter." Although they were whispering, the wife of the vice minister had always been loud, and her words fell on Dina Gu's ears, making her burn with shame. "In my previous life, whenever I took her out. I always made sure to preserve her dignity. Whenever she is introduced to others, it is always emphasized that although she is not my biological daughter, she is treated no differently from a legitimate young lady in the household. Others, seeing that she is raised by the mistress, always regard her with a bit more respect. Every lady present is sharp-witted. Today, seeing me directly reveal her identity, they understood that I do not favor her. And those who are usually on good terms with me leaned in to whisper a reminder, "Madam Shen, could this girl be Lord Shen's illegitimate child from outside? My husband is not that kind of person." I shook my head. "Don't be so quick to dismiss it. Hasn't Lord Shen been going out frequently lately? I've run into him several times on Wutong Street, and he seemed flustered. Perhaps he's hiding someone there." Wutong Street. I deliberately feigned hesitation and looked at Dina Gu. She instinctively trembled, her hands hanging by her sides suddenly clutching her skirt, just as she grew tense thinking I was about to say something. I smiled and changed the subject. Dina Gu breathed a sigh of relief, but her face visibly paled. 17. The banquet has begun. With the announcement from the maidservant, the host of the banquet finally made an appearance. The Grand Princess, nearly 50 years of age, had slightly graying temples but still carried an air of grace and elegance. She gracefully made her way through the crowd, excused everyone from paying formal respects, and took her seat in the main position. The sound of singing and dancing rose as the servers filed in with the dishes. Dina Gu was seated next to me. Perhaps the shock from earlier was too great. As I felt a bit dazed at the moment, I exchanged a glance with Hong Yu. Hong Yu pretended to accidentally spill a cup of sweet drink on Dina Gu's skirt. Dina Gu was startled by the sudden chill and let out a sharp cry. The abrupt sound caused the surroundings to fall silent all at once. From the main seat came a woman's voice that was not lacking in authority. "What happened?" I stood up and apologized. "Please forgive me, Your Highness, it was my servant who was a bit clumsy." Then I urged Hong Yu, "Quickly take Miss Dina to change her clothes." Hong Yu acknowledged the order and was about to leave with Dina Gu. At this moment, the eldest princess in the main seat spoke again. "Wait, bring the person forward." The eldest princess pointed at Dina Gu. Dina Gu was brought before the eldest princess, and she was extremely flustered. "Greetings to the eldest princess, Your Highness." Dina Gu knelt on the ground, her body trembling slightly, fearing that the person above might deliver punishment at any moment. "You, lift your head," the princess commanded her. Dina Gu shakily raised her head, preparing to face a storm of anger. To her surprise, what she saw in the princess's eyes was not the expected displeasure about to erupt. This girl's eyes and brows bear some resemblance to how the consort looked back in the day. After carefully studying her for a long while, the princess slowly spoke, unable to conceal her melancholy and sorrow. "If my beloved daughter were still alive in this world, her child would be about this age by now. I wonder if they would resemble her, looking so much like the consort." Everyone present understood that the princess was once again thinking of her late husband and her only daughter, who had gone missing as a child and whose fate remained unknown. The consort was famously known as the most handsome man in the capital back in the day, and the little princess bore a striking resemblance to her father in her eyes and brows from the moment she was born. Sadly, the little princess, who should have grown up surrounded by her parents' love, went missing at the age of 3, and the consort passed away from illness not long after. In the vast mansion, despite the countless servants, the princess lived a life of solitude. "You are blessed to bear some resemblance to the consort. Nanny Li, please take her to change her clothes yourself, and then reward her with that pair of jade bracelets from my dressing case." Under the gentle gaze of the princess, Dina Gu was dazedly led away. The wife of the vice minister quietly leaned close to me, her words rather grating. "That adopted daughter of yours does seem to have some luck on her side." I simply smiled without speaking. "I only hope it's genuine luck." 18. After returning to the residence, Dina Gu slipped out eagerly with the pair of jade bracelets bestowed by the princess. The person I sent to Wutong Street reported the conversation between the mother and daughter to me word for word. Dina Gu recounted everything that had happened at the princess's residence to Jiu Ingshuang. Jiu Ingshuang initially didn't understand why Dina Gu was so agitated, until Dina Gu asked her, "Mother, didn't you once say that you vaguely remember not living with the Jiyu family before the age of 3, but rather in another large mansion?" Upon hearing this, Jiyu Ingshuang's heart skipped a beat. Dina Jiyu went on to recount in detail everything she had heard about the disappearance of the little princess from the Grand Princess's residence. After she finished speaking, mother and daughter exchanged a glance. Both saw the same unspoken suspicion in each other's eyes. "Wait, let your mother think this through first." Jiyu Ingshuang ultimately retained her reason. Knowing she couldn't rashly go to the princess's residence to claim kinship based solely on her daughter's few words, "We still need to gather more information to be safer." Dina Jiyu nodded, after the princess bestowed the jade bracelet. Those at the banquet who had previously looked down on her began to show subtle signs of currying favor. This made her unable to resist starting to envision the scene of those who looked down on others groveling at her feet once she became the granddaughter of the Grand Princess. 19. Ever since the Jiyu mother and daughter began their inquiries, they found that the story of Jiyu Ingshuang being the daughter of the Grand Princess seemed more and more plausible. Dina Jiyu couldn't wait to urge her mother to go to the Grand Princess's residence to claim their kinship. Jiyu Ingshuang still had some hesitation. "I always feel there's something not quite right about this matter." "Of course it's not right, because all the information they found out was deliberately leaked to them by me, Mom." "What's not right about it?" Dina Jiyu was somewhat displeased, not understanding what Jiyu Ingshuang was still worried about. "We sought out Jetshin in the first place precisely to escape our miserable lives. Wasn't that the reason?" "What kind of place is the Grand Princess's residence?" "It's simply incomparable to the Shen family. If you truly fancy Jetshin, once you become the Grand Princess's daughter, wouldn't Madame Shen and concubines you be completely at your mercy?" Just thinking about her future noble status, Dina Jiyu couldn't even bother to spare a single father for Jetshin. Jiyu Ingshuang was indeed even more tempted after hearing her daughter say this, but what truly made her decide was what happened next in the Shen residence. 20. Concubine Zhu was pregnant. Jetshin was very happy. Aunt Zhu has miscarried again. It was caused by Dina Jiyu. Dina Jiyu probably thought her status was extraordinary and no longer showed any courtesy to Bai Zhu. After several arguments with Bai Zhu, she pushed Bai Zhu to the ground with force. Jetshin's child, which he had worked so hard to achieve, had just turned into a pool of blood. "What a pity," the doctor said, "and it was a male fetus." I stood by Bijou's bedside, holding a handkerchief, shaking my head in regret. "Of course, I said this intentionally. How could anyone determine the gender of a 1-month-old fetus?" But Jetshin, upon hearing my words, immediately rushed out and kicked Dina Jiyu, who was kneeling in the courtyard. Jetshin's preference for sons over daughters is ingrained in his very bones. The false affection he showed Zhao Zhao instantly revealed its true nature after my death. Now that he knows Dina Jiyu caused the death of his son, the murderous intent in his eyes is genuine. That kick was delivered with considerable force, and Dina Jiyu curled up on the ground in pain. Jetshin still wanted to take action, but in the end, I stopped him. 21. Dina Jiyu, dragging her body that had been kicked and injured by Jetshin, went to Wutong Street again and never returned. A few days later, the joyous news of the eldest princess finding her daughter and granddaughter spread throughout the entire capital. Jetshin looked at the two familiar faces beside the eldest princess, so shocked that his jaw nearly dropped. He tried several times to see the Jiyu mother and daughter, but was repeatedly turned away. It wasn't until the princess's residence announced they were seeking a husband for the returned princess that Jetshin finally became extremely anxious and managed to see Jiyu Ingshuang by any means possible. After meeting with Jiyu Ingshuang, he returned to his study and sat there all night. Early the next morning, he came to find me with heavy dark circles under his eyes. "You know, Ray, the Grand Princess is someone we can't afford to offend, since she wants me to marry the princess. I have no choice but to let you suffer." Jetshin pretended to be helpless and forced into this situation, which made me almost sick to my stomach. It was clear that he had weighed the pros and cons and chosen to climb the social ladder, yet he made it sound as if he were the victim of deep affection and hardship. "My dear husband, I understand." I dabbed at the non-existent tears at the corner of my eyes. "I don't blame you, just give me a letter of divorce." Jetshin repeatedly waved his hand. No, what I mean is that the princess will be the principal wife, and I must ask you to lower your status to that of a secondary wife. I sneered inwardly. At this critical moment, he still wants to tie me down. Of course, I know what he's after. Even though he's about to become the esteemed son-in-law of the Grand Princess, he still can't let go of my dowry. Don't worry, husband, I only want Jiao Jiao. As for the dowry and such, I'll leave it all for you to handle the wedding arrangements. This, Jetsun indeed hesitated upon hearing this. I then struck while the iron was hot. Think about it. If the princess sees me often after she marries into the family, she's bound to remember that I was once your lawful wife. If the princess feels unhappy, she's sure to develop resentment toward you, my husband. Jetsun thought for a moment and felt that Jiyu Ingshuang might actually get jealous because of this. After much hesitation, he finally agreed to write the divorce agreement. Seeing him relent, I didn't waste any time either. I immediately brought out the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone and placed them in front of him. After he finished signing his name, I couldn't wait to tuck the divorce agreement into my bosom. Perhaps the curve of my lips was too obvious, as Jetsun slightly furrowed his brows. Ray, why do I get the feeling you're quite happy? Lord Shen, you misunderstand. I'm merely putting on a brave face. Hearing me change my tune so quickly, Jetsun thought I was blaming him and looked at me with affectionate eyes. Ray, don't worry, once I persuade the princess in the future, I'll bring you and Jiao Jiao over. Before he could finish, I signaled to Hong Yu to leave quickly. If I had to listen to this scoundrel for even half a sentence more, I'd be tainted with bad luck. 22. I took the divorce agreement to the government office to have it registered. And Jiao Jiao's household registration was also properly handled. I changed her surname for her. She no longer bears the surname Shun but now shares my surname. From then on, our mother and daughter had no further ties with the Shun family. As for the dowry I left for Jetsun, the valuable items had long been moved away, and what remained were just some flashy but useless trinkets. Jetsun was completely unaware, fully focused on becoming Jiyu Ingshuang's county consort. On the eve of their wedding, a tattered straw mat was carried out from the autumn fragrance courtyard of the Shun residence. Wrapped inside was a woman who had stopped breathing. Meanwhile, in an elegant room of a restaurant, I was meeting with a person of noble status. Accompanying me was also a woman wearing a veil. 26. Lord Shen's second wedding ceremony was held with great fanfare. Since he was marrying the daughter of the Grand Princess's household, nearly half of the prominent families in the capital attended. Dina Jiyu was dressed in luxurious clothing, holding her head high like a proud peacock. After Jiyu Ingshuang was formally recognized by her relatives, her status rose significantly, making her the object of admiration among her peers in the capital. Originally, she was unwilling for Jiyu Ingshuang to marry Jetsun, as she still held a grudge over the kick Jetsun had given her. However, since Jiyu Ingshuang was deeply infatuated with Jetsun, Dina Jiyu had no choice but to settle for the next best thing, having Jetsun deal with Bijou, who had been giving her a hard time all along. Jetsun naturally complied. Now, the two of them were the lifelines he had to hold on to tightly, but what puzzled everyone was that, despite it being her long-lost daughter's wedding, the princess had yet to appear. Why hasn't mother arrived yet? Jiyu Ingshuang, waiting to perform the wedding ceremony, sounded anxious. And even Jetsun couldn't help glancing toward the gate. Fortunately, Nanny Li from the princess's household hurried over to inform them that the princess had been delayed by some matters. Let them perform the wedding ceremony first, so as not to miss the auspicious time. Since it was the trusted aide of the princess who delivered the message, everyone felt reassured. The sound of drums and music continued to play, and the ceremony proceeded. Jetsun, who had finally become the princess consort, smiled with an air of triumph and pride. After the wedding ceremony concluded, the servants announced that the princess's carriage had arrived. Jetsun saw the maid beside the princess holding a roll of bright yellow silk brocade and couldn't help but feel his heart surge with excitement. It was likely that the princess had obtained a promotion decree for him. Her son-in-law, the imperial decree has arrived. The grand princess glanced around, her voice filled with authority. Everyone knelt down to listen to the imperial decree. After the grand princess finished reading the decree, everyone fell silent. This was not a decree of rewards or titles, but a document of condemnation, ordering the confiscation of property and exile. Jetsun slumped to the ground, unable to understand how his embezzlement, which he had carried out so secretly, had been exposed. I sneered in the shadows. Of course, it was I who had someone expose it. In his previous life, Jet Shun had also been involved in an embezzlement scandal. And the consequences back then were quite severe. The embankment he built while serving in Yuzhou collapsed during a heavy rain due to the use of substandard materials, resulting in countless civilian casualties. After I was reborn, I asked my cousin-in-law in Jiangju to collect evidence of his crimes and expose Jet Shun at the right moment. Although revealing it early couldn't sentence him to death, it would prevent innocent people from suffering in the future. It can be considered a virtuous deed. 27. House confiscation, exile. Jiyu Yingshuang and Dina Jiyu looked at each other, bewildered by the sudden turn of events. If the Shun family's property was confiscated, what would happen to the mother and daughter pair? Soon, someone gave them the answer. A team of officers rushed in, swiftly stripped them of their fine garments, and immediately put them in shackles, since it was a case of the entire family being confiscated and exiled. The newlywed wife and the new young lady naturally could not escape. Mother, what is happening? Jiyu Yingshuang looked to the princess for help. Dina Jiyu also cried out at the top of her voice, "Grandmother, save me." Even Jet Shun caught on, calling her mother-in-law repeatedly. At that moment, a woman who had been observing from the back stepped forward and loudly questioned, "Jiyu Yingshuang, you keep calling her mother, but are you really the daughter of the princess? Who are you?" Jiyu Yingshuang looked at the veiled woman, feeling inexplicably flustered, but she still forced herself to remain calm. "Who says I'm not my mother's daughter? Mother herself said that I look very much like my father." Indeed, if Dina Jiyu bore a 30% resemblance to the consort, then Jiyu Yingshuang bore a 50% resemblance. This was also the reason why she was able to falsely claim the identity of the eldest princess's daughter in her previous life. She had encountered the princess at a banquet and, noticing the princess's unusual expression when looking at her, she became cautious. In her past life, she went to great lengths to investigate and eventually uncovered the truth about her origins. She was indeed not a biological daughter of the Jiyu family, but neither was she a princess from the princess's estate. Jiyu Yingshuang was the orphaned child of a distant, impoverished relative of the Jiyu family. Coincidentally, her biological mother was a cousin of the consort, which is why she bore some resemblance to him. Jiyu Yingshuang saw how deeply the princess missed her daughter and felt that the opportunity had arrived. As the saying goes, fortune favors the bold. So she made the decision to falsely claim the identity of the princess's daughter. It must be said that this move of hers was quite effective. The princess missed her daughter dearly, and that face of hers was the best weapon to win hearts. After Jiyu Yingshuang became the princess, she was deeply cherished by the princess. In her previous life, when Jet Shun was in trouble, the princess even stepped in to save his life for her. Unfortunately, this time, Jiyu Yingshuang could hardly protect herself. 28. The woman tore off her veil, and everyone's eyes widened in astonishment as they saw her face, because her appearance was strikingly similar to that of the eldest princess. The young princess was only 3 years old when she went missing, and her features had not yet fully developed. Who would have thought that, while she resembled the princess consort in her childhood, she would grow up to look more like the eldest princess? This is also why, when I saw Anyang in my previous life, I knew that the identity of Princess Jiyu Yingshuang was falsely claimed. Unfortunately, at that time, I was a wisp of a wandering spirit, unable to speak and unable to tell everyone the truth. Guards. Jiyu Yingshuang has falsely claimed to be a member of the royal family. Drag her away and give her 50 heavy strikes with the board. The princess kicked away Jiyu Yingshuang, who was kneeling and crawling on the ground trying to grab the hem of her skirt, her face full of disgust. A lively wedding banquet thus ended with Jiyu Yingshuang's piercing scream. 29. Thank you, Sister Wen. It's all thanks to you that I could return to my mother's side. Anian held my hand, her heart and eyes brimming with gratitude. I shook my head. It is I who should thank you. Thank you for your kindness towards Zhao Zhao in your previous life at the Chen family, even when you were in dire straits yourself. From now on, there will be no Anyang who was sold into Master Chen's mansion as the 18th concubine and abused until covered in wounds. Only the esteemed and noble Princess Minghua of the Chong Princess Manor. Mother, the carriage from Jiangju stopped right beside the two of us. A cheerful figure eagerly jumped down from the carriage and rushed straight into my arms. Jiao Jiao, the little girl must have been eating well in Jiangju, as she had grown quite a bit. I almost couldn't catch her. Thanks to An Yang for giving me a hand. Jiao Jiao stuck out her tongue a little sheepishly, and upon seeing An Yang, she seemed a bit puzzled. This auntie looks so familiar, as if I've seen her somewhere before. An Yang also seemed to like Jiao Jiao very much. Sister Wen, I feel so fond of Jiao Jiao at first sight. How about letting Jiao Jiao recognize me as her godmother? That would be wonderful. Godmother, Jiao Jiao called out sweetly. Anian picked her up and gave her a kiss. Under the setting sun, my eyes grew a little moist. 30. Jetshen and the Jiyu mother and daughter were all exiled. Jiyu Ingshuang died not long after setting out, having succumbed to the injuries from the beating. Some time later, news of Jetshen's death also arrived. When I received the message, I didn't stop moving the abacus, every time he returned from the autumn fragrance courtyard. The tonic that Baizhu served him was laced with quite a few good ingredients. It's a miracle he lasted this long. Mother, Jiao Jiao suddenly ran in with a terrified expression. What's wrong? I put down the ledger in my hand. I dreamed of father. He looked so terrifying, all tattered and torn. In the dream, he kept holding my hand and saying he was sorry. He also told me to forgive him. My face immediately darkened upon hearing that. That bitch, even in death she still wants to haunt our daughter. It seems the lesson she received wasn't enough. The next day, I spent a fortune to acquire a ritual object that had been consecrated before a Buddha for many years. It's said to be able to strike at souls, shake spirits, and dispel evil influences. Jiao Jiao, don't be afraid, mother will sleep with you tonight. I stayed by her side until midnight, and sure enough, I saw her fall into a nightmare. I took out my magical instrument and shook it, hearing only a piercing sound. It seemed as if something let out a mournful and piercing scream. Looking at Jiao Jiao again, her sleeping face had returned to tranquility. I let out a sigh of relief. From then on, whether human or ghost, nothing would disturb the lives of our mother and child anymore. Years later, Jiao Jiao, now married, took me out for an excursion as I had passed my 50s. On the road, I encountered a woman who seemed completely deranged. It appeared she had suffered some form of abuse. As there wasn't a patch of unblemished skin on her body, she would rush toward anyone she saw, shouting, "I am the crown princess! I am the crown princess!" Jiao Jiao carefully shielded me and steered us away from her. The handsome young man ahead, welcoming us, waved at us under the sunlight. Are you asking me if he is the crown prince? Our Jiao Jiao, in this lifetime, never encountered the crown prince who, by a twist of fate, married Dina Jiyu. She simply found her own ordinary happiness.